My sister stole my husband, but she didn't steal my revenge. When my sister ran away with my husband, they thought I'd break. Instead, I built the kind of revenge that neither of them saw coming. In the heart of suburban America, betrayal cuts deeper when it comes from family. She gave her sister love, trust, and loyalty, only to watch her steal the man she had built a life with. But betrayal doesn't end in silence. This is the story of a woman who rises from heartbreak and humiliation to reclaim her life, her dignity, and her power. A tale of betrayal, resilience, and ultimate revenge, where blood may be thicker than water, but vengeance runs hotter than both. The day I caught my husband with my sister wasn't the day my marriage ended. It was the day I began planning my revenge. I always thought betrayal would come from far away, from strangers, from the world outside. But when it came from the two people I trusted most, my own flesh and blood, and the man I swore to spend forever with. My name is Hannah Collins, 34 years old, living in a modest but beautiful suburban home in Austin, Texas. I had everything I thought mattered: a husband, a home, a decent job, and a family that was supposed to stand by me through thick and thin. And then came Leah, my younger sister. She was always the wild one, the prettier one, the one who never thought about consequences. Where I was steady, she was reckless. Where I worked hard, she chased shortcuts. But I never imagined she would chase the shortcut into my husband's bed. The first signs it started small. My husband Daniel became distant, his phone always glued to his hand, his laughter echoing in another room at midnight. I'd ask, "Who's that?" And he'd smile nervously, saying, "Just work emails." But I wasn't stupid. My instincts screamed something was wrong. One Sunday afternoon, I noticed Leah's perfume in our car. Not just any perfume, her signature vanilla scent that she'd worn since college. I told myself, maybe she borrowed the car. Maybe Daniel gave her a ride. But deep down, my stomach twisted into knots. The final straw came one evening when Daniel said he had to stay late at the office. Something pushed me to check the family iPad, which synced with his phone. A careless mistake on his part. There they were, messages between him and Leah. "Can't stop thinking about you. Last night was amazing. She doesn't suspect a thing." The she was me. I sat there, shaking, reading betrayal carved into glowing blue bubbles. My sister, my husband, together. The world tilted. My heart raced. I wanted to scream, to smash the iPad, to confront them right then. But instead, I closed it slowly, like sealing a coffin, because something inside me whispered, "Don't cry, don't break, plan the betrayal." Uncovered, the next day I followed Daniel. My hands trembled on the steering wheel as I tailed his car across town. He wasn't heading to work. Instead, he pulled into a cheap motel on the outskirts of Austin, and then she stepped out of a cab. Leah, my sister. She was laughing, flipping her long hair like the world owed her joy. She kissed him before they even made it inside. I sat in my car, fingers digging into the leather steering wheel until it nearly tore. That was the moment I knew. They didn't deserve my tears. They deserved my revenge. Building my mask for their next few weeks, I played the perfect wife and sister. I smiled at Leah during family dinners. I kissed Daniel goodnight. I packed his lunches, pressed his shirts, pretended to be blind. But behind that smile, I was planning. Every glance, every laugh, every lie, they were fuel. I wasn't just going to leave them. That would be too easy. They wanted to humiliate me, replace me, break me. No, I was going to make sure they lost everything before I walked away. Step 1. Information. Revenge needs information, and I collected it like a soldier preparing for war. Daniel was careless with his laptop. I knew his passwords, his bank accounts, his business dealings. I downloaded copies of everything: tax returns, business contracts, personal investments. Leah, on the other hand, was reckless. She never locked her phone when she visited our house. I scrolled through her messages, her photos, dozens of pictures, with Daniel, kissing, holding hands, lying in bed together. Disgust burned in my chest, but I saved them all. Evidence. Step 2. The calm before the storm. Outwardly, life went on. We had barbecues in the backyard, laughed with neighbors, attended church on Sundays. Leah sat across from me at dinner, sipping wine, her eyes glinting with secret satisfaction. Daniel even held my hand in public, pretending to be the devoted husband. If they thought they were fooling me, they were wrong. I was fooling them, because every moment of my calmness, every fake smile, was the silence before a hurricane. Step 3. The perfect timing. I knew revenge wasn't about screaming accusations. It was about timing, precision, and impact. So I waited. Waited until Leah moved into a new apartment, funded secretly by Daniel. Waited until Daniel signed a new business deal that meant everything to his company. Waited until the perfect moment when they felt untouchable. Because when you strike at the peak. When the fall hurts most, the calm. Before my strike, I learned something in those silent weeks. Revenge tastes best when savored slowly, watching Daniel kiss my cheek in the morning, before sneaking out to Leah's apartment, watching Leah giggle through dinner, as if she were my sister and not my enemy. Every second sharpened my blade. I became an actress, and my home was the stage. Nobody suspected I was rehearsing the greatest performance of my life. At night, I would sit on the porch with a glass of wine, scrolling through my collected evidence, emails, photos, bank transfers. The betrayal was carved into my phone like sacred scripture. A reminder of why I couldn't just walk away. Because walking away would let them win, and I don't lose. Step 4. The trap. I didn't just want them exposed. I wanted them ruined. Daniel's business deal was my first weapon. He was co-owner of a growing construction company, and his new contract with a Dallas developer was the biggest of his career. Millions were on the line, his reputation, his future. And he had made a mistake. He'd funneled some company funds into Leah's apartment, disguising them as business expenses. Fraud. Evidence I had tucked neatly into a USB drive. I contacted the Dallas developer anonymously, sending the files. I didn't say much, just enough for them to see the numbers didn't add up. Enough to make them suspicious. The next morning, Daniel received a furious phone call. I listened from the kitchen as his voice rose, his face turning pale. The deal was on hold, pending internal investigation. Strike 1. Step 5. Social ruin. Next came Leah. She worked part-time at a boutique salon downtown, living more off Daniel's money than her own paycheck. Leah had always been obsessed with her reputation, her Instagram followers, her image of being the fun, stylish, independent woman. So I gave her followers something new to see. I created a fake account and uploaded the photos I'd stolen from her phone, her in bed with Daniel, kissing him in his car, tangled in motel sheets. I didn't need captions. The pictures spoke louder than words. Within hours, her influencer life crumbled. Clients cancelled appointments, her boss fired her for unprofessional conduct, and friends who once adored her filled the comments with venom. Strike 2. The confrontation I didn't plan. What I hadn't expected was that they'd confront me before I was ready. It was a Thursday evening when Daniel came home early. His face was twisted with rage, his tie loose around his neck. "Did you do this?" he demanded, slamming his fist against the dining table. "Did you send those files?" I looked up from my book, calm as still water. "Do what?" "Don't play dumb, Hannah." His voice cracked. "My deal is ruined. Someone sent them everything. Everything." I closed the book slowly, meeting his furious eyes. "Well, maybe you should have been more careful with your business. And your personal life." His face drained of color. He realized then that I knew. Before he could answer, the front door opened. Leah stormed in, mascara running down her cheeks, holding her phone like a weapon. "You bitch!" she screamed. "You ruined me. Do you know what people are saying about me? You destroyed my life." I stood, finally letting the mask slip. My voice was ice. "No, Leah, you destroyed my life. I just returned the favor." For a moment, the house was silent, except for their breathing. Shallow, panicked, guilty. It was the confrontation I'd dreamed of. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Step 6. The public execution. A private confrontation wasn't enough. I wanted the world to see them for what they were. So I planned a family dinner. I invited my parents, cousins, aunts, everyone. Leah thought I was extending an olive branch. Daniel thought I was trying to move on. They both underestimated me. The dining table was set beautifully, candles glowing, dishes steaming. My parents smiled, relieved that maybe the sisters had reconciled. Then, just as dessert was served, I stood and tapped my glass. "There's something I want to share," I said. I projected the photos on the TV, Leah and Daniel in each other's arms, in motel rooms, their betrayal as clear as daylight. Gasps filled the room. My mother covered her mouth. My father's face turned crimson with fury. Leah's fork clattered to the plate. Daniel muttered a curse under his breath. I looked directly at my parents. "That's what my husband and my sister have been doing behind my back for months." The room erupted. My mother burst into tears. My father ordered Leah out of the house. Cousins whispered. Aunts shook their heads in disgust. Daniel tried to speak, but every word he said dug his grave deeper. Leah fled first, her heels clicking like gunshots on the floor. Daniel stormed out seconds later, slamming the door so hard the walls shook, and I sat there, calm, sipping my wine, watching the ashes of my old life scatter around me. Strike 3, the aftermath. The days that followed were chaos for them, liberation for me. Daniel's company fired him. He lost his position, his deal, his reputation in the industry. His business partner filed a lawsuit for fraud. Leah, jobless and humiliated, packed up and moved out of the city. Nobody in our family spoke to her again. My parents said she was dead to them. And me, I filed for divorce, taking half of everything. Daniel tried to fight it, but the evidence of his adultery made the court lean in my favor. The house was mine. The savings were mine. He walked away with nothing but debt and disgrace. The sweetest revenge one night, months later. I sat on the same porch with a glass of wine. The air was cool, the stars sharp in the Texas sky. For the first time in months, I felt peace. Revenge hadn't just been about making them suffer. It was about reclaiming myself, showing them I wasn't weak. That betrayal didn't define me. They thought they had broken me, but I was still here. Stronger, smarter, untouchable. Leah stole my husband, but she didn't steal my revenge, and that revenge was the sweetest thing I had ever tasted. Daniel's full divorce wasn't the end of Daniel. It was only the beginning of his fall. His company cut ties with him after the fraud allegations. His business partner, Mark Jensen, filed a lawsuit demanding damages for the money Daniel had siphoned off. The Dallas developer blacklisted him. Word spread fast in the Texas business world, and doors slammed in his face. I heard it all through the grapevine. Mutual friends called me, whispering updates with a mix of pity and satisfaction. Some even congratulated me on dodging a bullet. Daniel tried calling me dozens of times, first with apologies, then with anger, and finally with desperation. I never picked up. His voicemails filled with words like, "Please, Hannah, I need your help. They're going to take everything. And, you can't do this to me. You were my wife." But I could, and I did. The irony was poetic. He thought I was weak, that I would collapse without him, yet he was the one drowning. Leah's collapse didn't fare much better. After her reputation imploded online, she tried to rebuild her life. She dyed her hair, changed her Instagram handle, and even applied for jobs in Dallas. But no matter where she went, whispers followed. Clients avoided her. Old friends ghosted her. And family treated her like a stain they couldn't scrub away. She moved in with Daniel for a while, clinging to him as though their shared misery might keep them afloat. But two broken people don't create stability. They create chaos. They fought constantly. I know because Leah called me once at midnight sobbing, "Hannah, he's drinking, he's yelling, he's broke. I don't know what to do." I almost laughed at the audacity. My own sister, the woman who stole my husband, crying to me about how hard her life had become with him. I said only one thing before hanging up. "You made your bed. Now lie in it." The letters. They sent weeks turned into months, and the letters began. Daniel sent me a handwritten one, begging for forgiveness. His words were shaky, the paper stained with something. I couldn't tell if it was whiskey or tears. "I don't know who I am without you. Leah isn't you. She never was. I made the worst mistake of my life. Please, Hannah, I'll do anything." I burned it in the fireplace. Watching the flames eat his words was more satisfying than any apology could ever be. Leah's letter was shorter, bitter. "You think you won, but you'll be alone forever. At least I had the guts to take what I wanted. You'll never be happy." I pinned that one on the fridge like a trophy. Every time I poured myself coffee, I smiled at it, because she was wrong. The new beginning revenge hadn't just been about tearing them down. It was about lifting myself up. After the divorce settlement, I had enough money to start over. I left the house we once shared and bought a new one in downtown Austin. A modern condo with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline. It felt like freedom. I started painting again, something I'd abandoned years ago. When life became about Daniel's career, my canvases filled with bold colors, storms, fire, and light. Each stroke was a piece of myself I thought I'd lost. I even went back to school, enrolling in evening business courses. It was something I'd always wanted, but never had the time or support for. Now, I had both, and for the first time in years, I felt alive. Their final attempt, but Daniel and Leah weren't done. One rainy night, nearly a year after the divorce, they showed up at my condo, together. I opened the door to see them standing. There, Daniel looking thinner, his suit wrinkled, Leah with shadows under her eyes, mascara smudged from tears. "What do you want?" I asked flatly. Daniel stepped forward. "Hannah, please. We need your help. The lawsuit. The debt. We're losing everything. We're sorry, okay? We made a mistake. Just help us. Just this once." Leah's voice cracked. "You're my sister. Family doesn't abandon each other. I laughed. A sharp, cold laugh. That echoed in the hallway. Family? You stopped being my sister the moment you climbed into his bed. Their faces fell, desperation twisting them into something pitiful. I stepped aside, not to let them in, but to point at the door across the hall, where the security guard was already walking over. If you ever show up here again, I said, I'll have you arrested for trespassing. The guard stopped beside me, arms crossed. Daniel cursed under his breath. Leah sobbed again, and together they slunk away down the hall like criminals. I shut the door behind them, locking it with a satisfying click. That was the last time I ever saw them. The power of survival. In the months that followed, I built a new life, one that wasn't defined by betrayal, but by survival. Friends returned. My parents visited often, apologizing for not noticing sooner, for not protecting me from Leah. I told them it wasn't their fault. Some wars you fight alone. I even began dating again, not seriously at first, but it felt good to laugh with someone new, to feel desired without fear of betrayal. Every step forward was a reminder. I had won. Not because Daniel and Leah were ruined, but because I wasn't. The reflection. Sometimes, late at night, I'd sit on my balcony, overlooking the glittering city, and think about everything that had happened. If you had told me years ago that my sister would steal my husband, I would have said I couldn't survive it, that I'd shatter into pieces. But I didn't shatter. I sharpened. I became something stronger than they ever imagined. And though revenge had been my fuel, survival was my victory. Because Leah stole my husband, but she didn't steal my revenge. And she sure as hell didn't steal my future. The quiet, after the storm, after that final night when Daniel and Leah stood at my door, something shifted inside me. It wasn't just the satisfaction of shutting the door on them. It was the realization that they were no longer a part of my story. They were ghosts, fading into shadows I no longer needed to fear. I thought revenge would feel like fire, but in truth, it felt like silence, a calm, steady silence that told me I was finally free. But freedom is strange at first. I would wake up in my condo, sunlight spilling across the hardwood floors, and feel both exhilarated and lost. For so long, my life had revolved around Daniel's career, Leah's chaos, the lies, the pain. Who was I without all that? Painting. My pain. I turned to painting, pouring every ounce of confusion, rage, and healing onto the canvas. One of my first pieces was a swirl of black and red strokes, slashing through a white background. I called it Betrayal. Another was a series of broken rings, jagged and unfinished, that I titled Promises. But as months passed, the colors softened. My canvases began to fill with blues, greens, golds, hope bleeding into the emptiness. One painting, a wide horizon with a single rising sun, I named Revenge is Survival. To my surprise, a local gallery owner who saw my work at a community show offered to feature my pieces. The opening night was small, but as I stood in that gallery, strangers admiring what I'd created, I felt something I hadn't in years. Pride. I wasn't just surviving, I was becoming Daniel's spiral of course. The world never let me forget. Daniel. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned his lawsuit with Mark ended badly. Not only did Daniel lose his share of the company, but the court ordered him to repay a staggering amount of money. His assets were liquidated, his accounts frozen. He moved into a cramped apartment on the edge of town, barely able to pay rent. I heard whispers that he'd taken up drinking heavily, often seen stumbling out of bars, muttering to himself. One story, told by a mutual friend, stuck with me. Apparently, Daniel had been thrown out of a business mixer after drunkenly shouting that women ruin everything. He had become a cautionary tale in Austin's business circles. The man who once thought he was untouchable had been reduced to nothing but a bitter, broken shell. Leah's isolation. Leah's fall was quieter, but no less tragic. She burned through what little money she had. When Daniel couldn't support her, she drifted from couch to couch, relying on temporary friends who eventually grew tired of her drama. Her social media, once vibrant with filtered selfies and curated outfits, fell silent. The last photo she posted was a blurry shot of a sunset with the caption, "Starting over." But she never did. My mother told me once, in a soft, pained voice, that Leah had called begging for forgiveness. She said she misses her sister, Mom whispered. I didn't answer, because forgiveness is not the same as forgetting, and I could never forget. Learning to trust, again. Healing wasn't just about destroying the past. It was about opening myself to the future. I met Ethan at one of my gallery shows. He was a writer, tall with kind eyes and a quiet humor that disarmed me. At first, I kept him at arm's length. I didn't trust easily anymore. But Ethan was patient. He never pushed, never demanded. He listened. He laughed with me. And slowly, I found myself letting him in. One evening, we sat on my balcony as the city lights shimmered below us. Ethan turned to me and said, "You've been through hell, Hannah, but you don't wear it like armor. You wear it like a crown." His words hit me harder than I expected. For so long, I thought of myself as broken, but in his eyes, I was strong, regal, victorious. That night, for the first time since the betrayal, I let someone hold me without fear. The family reckoning. My parents never fully recovered from what Leah had done. To them, it was as though they'd lost a daughter. At family gatherings, her absence hung heavy in the air. My mother sometimes cried quietly, blaming herself for raising two daughters who had grown so far apart. But I told her gently, "This wasn't your fault, Mom. This was hers. She made her choices." My father, on the other hand, refused to speak Leah's name. To him, she was gone, dead. It hurt, in a way, because despite everything, Leah was my sister, a piece of me, even in betrayal. But some wounds never close. Some blood ties are better cut, the last encounter. It was a chilly autumn afternoon when I saw her again. I was walking downtown, arms full of groceries, when I noticed a familiar figure slumped on a park bench, Leah. She looked nothing like the sister I remembered. Her hair was greasy, her clothes worn, her eyes hollow. She was staring at the ground, muttering something under her breath. For a moment, I froze. A part of me wanted to turn and walk away, but another part, the sister who once loved her, took a step forward. Her eyes flicked up and met mine. Recognition flared, followed by shame. "Hannah," she whispered, voice cracked. I stood there, torn between rage and pity. Finally, I said, "I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for." And I walked away. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't forgiveness. It was closure. Rising from the ashes, by the time the year closed, I had sold several paintings, finished my first semester of business courses with top grades, and built a small but steady circle of friends who truly cared. Ethan and I grew closer, not rushed, but steady, like waves against a shore. He never replaced my past. He helped me write a new one. Looking back, I realized the greatest revenge hadn't been their ruin. It had been my rebirth. Leah stole my husband. Daniel betrayed me. But in the end, I took back something greater than either of them ever had, myself, the fear of happiness. It's strange how betrayal makes you fear happiness. Even as my life began to rebuild, I found myself flinching whenever something good happened. If Ethan held my hand too tightly, I wondered, will he leave too? When I sold a painting, I thought, what if this is the last? Pain trains you to expect disaster. It whispers that joy is fragile, that love is a trick. One evening, as Ethan and I cooked dinner together in my condo, I must have gone quiet. He touched my cheek gently and said, "You don't have to wait for the other shoe to drop, Hannah. You deserve this." I didn't answer, but for the first time, I allowed myself to believe him. The world moves on. Daniel's name occasionally surfaced in whispers. Someone said he'd left Austin, trying to find work in Houston. Others said he was living in his car. I didn't care, enough to find out the truth. Leah, too, faded into the background of the city. I never saw her again after that park bench. Maybe she moved. Maybe she didn't. Either way, she no longer haunted me. For the first time in years, I woke up without bitterness as my first thought. Instead, I woke up thinking about paint colors, lesson plans, and the quiet possibility of love. The world had moved on, and so had I. The exhibition 16. Months after my divorce, the gallery owner who'd first taken a chance on me offered me a solo exhibition. My work, my story, displayed for the city to see. The theme was rebirth. The opening night was packed. Guests moved slowly through the gallery, pausing at canvases like betrayal, promises, revenge as survival. But the centerpiece was a massive painting I'd worked on for weeks. A phoenix rising from flames, wings spread wide, eyes burning bright. I titled it, "She Stole My Husband, but Not My Future." Standing in front of it, I felt tears prick my eyes, not from sadness, but from victory. I had turned my pain into something beautiful, something immortal. When Ethan wrapped his arm around me and whispered, "You did this, Hannah. You turned ashes into gold," I knew he was right. The proposal. Months later, Ethan proposed, not with a grand gesture, but in the quiet way he always did things. We were at home, on the balcony, the city glowing beneath us. He handed me a small box and said, "I don't want to replace your past. I want to build your future, with you." My chest tightened. For a long moment, I didn't speak. Then I whispered, "I'm scared." "I know," he said softly. "But we'll be scared together." And for the first time, I said yes. Not just to him, but to happiness. The letter I wrote before our wedding. I sat down one night with pen and paper. Not for Ethan, not for my parents, but for myself. It read, "Hannah, you survived. You endured betrayal that should have broken you, but you stood tall. You fought with silence, with fire, with grace. You turned revenge into rebirth. Never forget who you are now. You are not the woman who was betrayed. You are the woman who rose." I folded the letter and tucked it into my journal, a reminder for the days when doubt still tried to whisper in my ear. The wedding, it wasn't grand, just family, a few close friends, a quiet ceremony in the Texas Hill Country. My parents cried as they walked me down the aisle. My father whispered, "This time, we know he deserves you." And as I looked at Ethan, I realized he did, not because he was perfect, but because he loved me in the scars, not in spite of them. There was an empty seat in the back row, one we hadn't placed. Some part of me wondered if Leah might show up, lurking in the shadows. She didn't, and for the first time, I was glad, because this day wasn't about her, or Daniel, or betrayal. It was about me. The final reflection. Years later, people sometimes ask me if I regret what I did. If I regret destroying Daniel and Leah the way I did, my answer is always the same. No, because revenge wasn't just about ruining them. It was about reclaiming myself. It was about refusing to let betrayal define me. It was about turning my deepest wound into my greatest weapon. Yes, Leah stole my husband, but she didn't steal my revenge, and she sure as hell didn't steal my future. As I sit now in my studio, sunlight warming the canvases, Ethan's laughter drifting from the kitchen, I realize one truth that guides me still. Betrayal may break your heart, but it does not have to break you. In the ashes of pain, there is always a seed of power, and when it blooms, nothing and no one can take it away. The end.